There you go. Thank you.
Good. All right. So we'll get started. Thanks for everybody for sharing where you're at across the nation. I don't know if we have anybody worldwide today. And what your role is. Looks like we have a mix of instructional designers and instructors. My name is Lisa Kidder. I work at Idaho State University. My official title is Quality Plus Program Manager. Basically, I work with the Quality Matters implementation here on campus, but I do a little bit of everything. I also teach adjunct for both ISU and University of Arkansas. So I have some of that background, and I began my career in K-12. So I have this really weird breadth of experience, but I love it. So hopefully you'll find some things today that will help you. First things, so as we get started, there's a link to a Google folder with these slides. There's also a bit.ly link showing on the screen. If you need me to post it in the chat, I can do that. Feel free to put things in the chat. I've got my windows organized. In Zoom, you don't have to always go full screen. So go ahead and use that view option and, make things a little bit smaller to organize your screens and your slides. Thank you, Heather, for posting that in the chat. All right, so little Zoom. I want you to find your annotation tools because we are going to use them. So usually they are up in the view options and you'll see an annotate. And then you'll get a menu that pops up depending on where you're at. And I want you to go ahead and practice on this screen. So use the text, the draw, or the stamp, and just put something on the white space here. All right. All right. Looks like a large portion of you are finding your annotation tools. If you haven't used the annotation tools before, this is actually kind of, I like using annotation tools, especially here when we're in a conference. And so like polling and things make it more difficult with the reuse of rooms. So we're going to take advantage of the annotation tools here. So it looks like everybody's found some. Note, when I use annotation tools with students, I do this exact same thing. I give them a blank slide so that you can explore and play and get your arrows out and your eraser and your formatting and all of that. All right, so, and it reminds me I need to get my annotate out so I'm going to clear all your drawings so we can move on to the next slide. Okay, totally can't find them. You're going to look for the view options at the very top. Is usually where it is. Sometimes, depending on how you do your annotations or your Zoom slides, sometimes they go down to the bottom. Sometimes you'll see this. That's usually the instructor, but your view is probably about this. And then this pops up. And sometimes if you have two screens, it pops up on the other screen, depending on how you have things. All right, so I'm going to clear all the drawings. And we're going to move on to the next slide where, all right, we're talking about taming the lions, tigers, and bears of online course management. So using your text or your draw, what management tasks get in the way of your teaching? Go ahead and put them on the screen. Use those annotation tools again. With the text one, you usually draw a box. Click on it, try and draw. All right, you were doing great on the last page. Grading, lots of votes for grading. Fixing broken links. Great use of those annotation tools to just redo the grading again and check box. Tracking students. Answering the same questions again and again and again. Nice use of those stamps again. If you don't feel like typing, you can pick somebody else's answer. This is one of the other reasons I like this annotation tool. Tracking, missing assignments. Okay. Lots of stars on that same questions. When I first started thinking about something practical, the thing that always comes to my mind is emails. And everybody complains about online courses and they get all of the emails, which is basically that answering the same questions repeatedly. So moving on to our next slide. Thinking about the lions, tigers, and bears. These were the three main things, and you hit on all of them. Grading, questions and emails, and time management. I would say the tracking students and all of that would fall under that time management piece. And I will say tracking students is not something that we're going to talk a lot about today, but I'm making a mental note that, and there may be some ideas here that will help you in thinking of that, or focusing on the students. That's really what we want to do. So maybe if we can take some of these other items out of the way, then you can focus and have more time to track students. So these are our lions, tigers, and bears. Here's our objectives. Notice grading was first. Evaluating grade tasks. One of the things that I've come to use is a course guide. We'll talk about how that was developed and what it's included in it. And then hopefully through here, you'll be able to find some strategies that will work in your course. The other thing is you probably might find some strategies that you're already using, and that's great. And you always have the chat. So I'm watching the chat, so feel free to jump into the chat if you have additional ideas to share. That's what we're here for. We're here to help everybody. So, all right, we're going to talk about grading. Grading is the lion's share of all of the stuff that we do, especially in an online course. So thinking about grading, do you use a grading comments file or grading guidelines? Do you have a file of commonly used phrases? Do you use the tools within your LMS? Some of those tools, you can actually put all of your commonly used feedback files in there. Within your learning management system, many of them are also ways to remind yourself, okay, now how did I grade this essay question? Give yourself notes, create processes that so you don't have to rethink the same thing over and over and over again. So with some of these, we're talking about big ideas. Each of us have a different learning management system. You'll see some examples from various tools that I have access to. But generally, all you have to do is, how do I make a list of commonly used feedback? One, you just start with a Word document or a Google Doc. You can ask your LMS administrator or your instructional designers how to basically embed all of those reminders for you within your tools. And you can take the time. You don't have to build it all out. You do these one at a time. So in terms of grading comments, I want you to think of the assignment or the activity where you have the most comments. Start there. And all you do to start is you open up a file, you start grading. And as you make comments to individual students, you just dump the comments and copy them into your file. And then you begin creating that resource for you. Once you have that resource in a file, then you can go into your LMS and say, is there a way that I can just put these in here so that I can just click a plus? Other things with technology is to speech to text. Many of the tools allow you to do voice. So you could do audio video, which is jumping to the next one. But you can also just talk things out. Google Docs, you can just open up a Google Doc. We're a Google school, so sorry. I will refer to those a lot. And you just click on it and you just start talking. And then you can, revise it, update it, and make it personal. All right. Lots of checks and stamps, love those. Here's some examples of different ways. So this is right here up at the top is a Google file. I actually co-facilitate some of the workshops that I do. And so this was a way to help brand new people into our organization and reminding them that if they put feedback in the rubric that they need to let the students know that it's there. So here's some common phrases. This document has a heading for each of the items in that course and the commonly used phrases. It's a living document. And so with my co-facilitators, every time they have something that's great, they just copy it in there, which is part of the reason why you see it's like bolded down here. Some of the examples, you'll see the formatting gets all wonky. We don't worry about that. We just fix it when it gets copied in the LMS. In terms of feedback comments, look, there's a video and audio here. This is Canvas, this is Moodle. Again, audio, video, walkthrough. This is Turnitin, if you recognize that. These are frequently used comments that can be embedded. Here is Moodle, here is Turnitin. These are Turnitin defaults that are already there. But you can take these, and what happens is when you're in the rubric and the feedback comments, you hit a plus button, pick the comment you want, and it's in there. The other thing with greater information, so I was working with a faculty, and to give you context, this is an essay question where the students watch a video and they have to make a decision on whether or not, as an audiologist, they would refer them to a speech pathologist. So the goal is, do you refer them or not? And that's the question. And then they have to support their answers. So rather than trying to remember all of the different videos, the instructor just wrote a brief synopsis of each of the videos and the greater information. So she has a good feel for it. And then in terms of grading, how she was grading it. And we put those into each of those essay questions so that while she was there grading, all she had to do was read the student's response, check against hers, and then put the grade in. Use your technology tools. Okay, back to my mouse. You need to identify what really needs your personal attention. And I'm going to rub up against some instructors. But even though my main role is an instructional designer, I come from a teaching background. I started in K-12. I teach as an adjunct. And in terms of grading, I will ask, do you really have to grade everything? Now there's grading in terms of giving it a number, giving it a letter grade, clicking things on rubric. There's also grading in terms of providing feedback. And in this one, I'm going to focus on the feedback because that's the part that takes a long time. So what types of activities need personal feedback and what types can be done generally? And so here's some annotation. So thinking about your course, and I know some of these will be specific, get out your annotation tools again, get your text button open, and what types of activities, and you can be shorthand, need personal feedback, but what things could be done with general feedback? So I'll give you some time to put some comments in there. Oops. Sorry about that. All right, you're doing really well on the personal feedback. But I want you to think, are there any other places where general feedback would suffice? Right. Got a couple of other things there with that prompt. I really like and appreciated some of the descriptors that some of you used, and I missed some of the names on those ones, but like worksheets where all the answers are the same. An example of that we've used in one of the courses that I teach about accessibility, we give them a syllabus template that's broken. They run the accessibility check, and then they fix the accessibility errors. So in terms of a grade, we just count how many errors they fixed. But in terms of specific feedback, what we do is we've provided a detailed description of all of the errors and how to fix them, and that becomes available after they receive a grade. So it's a file that was just put into the LMS. I don't even need to think about it. It just happens automatically. On the other side of things, personal feedback where there's a lot of subjectiveness, early. Several of you mentioned early. If you provide good feedback in the beginning, then you can pull back on the feedback and help your students become that self-directed learner. The early discussions reminded me of there's phases of engagement. And I'm trying to remember who it was, and I'm drawing a blank, but it talks about how you are the leader in the beginning, but you slowly phase out your engagement. So those early discussions help model what your expectations are and setting that stage and that guiding, but then you pull back and let the students engage there. We have later term discussion feedback, tests, giving overall feedback. Film treatments and scripts, now that was on one side and then went back to the other. The other thing in here that I didn't put in here is there's personal feedback from you, there's general feedback from you, and the piece that's missing is peer review. Where can you engage your students to use a rubric to help with this? And Heather, yes, you were right. Conrad, yes, it's from that. There's a book in a series. I'm looking behind me. Engaging online learners. So that's where that phases of engagement shows up. So thank you for sharing, Heather. So as you think about the things in your course, the other thing to think about, things that need personal feedback are places where students commonly struggle in your course. So think about that topic that you have to reteach because somewhere along the line they learned it wrong. Or they're stuck with a preconceived notion that you need to redirect. Those would be places where that personal feedback, where your presence is definitely needed in there. But some of the things that are more of a rehash, a revision, those are things that you can pull back and give that general. The idea is that as you think about your grading time, which is precious, you want to maximize that interaction with students as much as possible and limit yourself from worksheets where the answers are all the same. Use your technology to help you with that, or put in we did with a resource so it becomes a self-check. In terms of rubrics, you can give your students rubrics and have them do peer review or self. So there's a bunch of ideas in there. So thank you. And I need to clear all our drawings. In terms of projects, most of you know in terms of a paper, you write your thesis, and then you have or you pick a topic, write your thesis, and you go through all of your different supporting phases. Break down your projects so that you can follow the guidelines that we just talked about, giving that personal feedback early on. So by the time the final project comes in, which is at the end of the term, and the students aren't going to read your feedback anyways, and they're not going to be able to really do anything with their final project that they submit in to revise or anything like that, because it's the end of the term. We're time bound that way. So as you provide feedback and guidance early on, you can then know that the final product is where it needs to be. This is an example. For University of Arkansas, I taught website design, and the final project was a website, and they had to get a real client and a website guide. Now, the website guide came out of the fact that if I have a student that's creating a website for somebody else, which they had to find a real client, they then had to hand over a guide on how to manage their website after that. So they pick their client. All of this happens through kind of reflection, conversations with me, one-on-one. This is taught in Blackboard, so we use the journal tool for most of these pieces. There's 10 pieces here that basically are submitted in their journal as a draft, and it's basically participation, but they get rich feedback from me through all the process. We talk about purpose and goals, audience analysis and competitors. They do actually some peer review, helping each other on why that's a good competitor or why it's not a good competitor. The website access is when we decide what platform they need to use. We talk about style guides going through. We talk about accessibility and copyright. And so we I have them teach their client how to abide by accessibility and copyright. All of that gets wrapped up into the guide. For the final project, all I need to do in terms of the website is I run an accessibility check because that's part of it, and make sure that the website is built out. But all of the underlying pieces are already there. I don't need to provide detailed feedback on all of that because we've already done it. So think about your projects and how you break them down, and how you can provide that feedback earlier in the course so that by the time you get to final, it really is a simple check and a confirmation of where they're at, and using a rubric helps, makes it easier. All right, questions and emails. This came up, there were lots of stars on this one, the same questions asked over and over and over again. Some of these things I know you already use. First of all, in your technology, manage your preferences. Be proactive and intentional on how you want to receive notifications with your course. Recently was started when I moved into teaching on Canvas. I got really frustrated because the notifications were confusing. I was missing the comments on assignments. And so I had to go in and explore and experiment a little bit on changing from right away to daily to weekly, each of the individual items, to make sure that I was getting notifications when I wanted and not too many, so I didn't ignore them. Email. Use the tools in your email. Use the tools to use labels, folders, filters, to help manage your emails. We're going to talk about a schedule in a little bit so that you can then be present in your course when you intend to be present in your course. Online courses sometimes have that tendency to be and feel like they're 24/7. And so in line with the keynote this morning in terms of balance is you need to figure out what your boundaries are. You need to communicate them as a QM rubric, and 5.3 asks, what's your communication plan with your students? But use the tools to help you organize that communication. So here's some examples in terms of, this is Canvas, so you can see that there are, right away, I don't need a notification every time a student submits. I'm going to go under the impression that I'm going to assume that the students are going to submit on time. We know that doesn't happen. That's why, daily, what is late in terms of grading? What do I need to follow up on? And then this was the key for me that was frustrating, is those submission comments, because they seem to get hidden. In Moodle, you have lots of options as well. Highlighting new posts, or whether you want a digest. As you post to discussions, pay attention to your subscriptions. Be intentional. Some things that I do, I always subscribe to the Q&A or the course forum that we're going to talk about next, so that I get those emails right away. But I actually don't subscribe to the student weekly discussions or bi-weekly or however often I have a discussion, because I have a planned time to go in and deal with those discussions. And that's communicated, and I've structured the discussions that way. This is an example of folders. You can see in this example, I have a filter set up. This is Google, Gmail. And if it comes in with this header, it automatically goes in this folder. You can see that I have 12 emails that have not been read that come from this course, and 1 email that is waiting to be read for this one. And so when I sit down to do EDUC 2215, I will then address those 12 emails. All right. Okay. Yes, Heather, the inbox. Go and be intentional. Go through all of those notifications. Try something. If that doesn't work, change it. So keep thinking about how this is going to work for you, and how you plan to do it. Again, I'm going to come back. Be intentional about this. Class questions. All right. So with these, we all know about the muddiest points. You have a general discussion where students can post any questions and help them. Here's some different titles that I've seen. I've also seen like Class Cafe. These are the ones that you want to subscribe to. These are the ones that you want to pay attention to. So make sure that you have a title that makes sense to you. So most of the LMS, when they send you a subscription, you can see which discussion it comes from. So make sure that it does have a unique name so that you know exactly, oh, this is one of those ones I need to respond to immediately. Have you ever considered creating a how do I resource? So for some of the commonly asked questions, or if you have a technical class, you're teaching statistics and you're using JUMP, all of those tutorials in JUMP, that would be in a how do I, little things. How do I print the syllabus? Depending on how you've uploaded into your LMS, that might be difficult. If you have a video assignment, how do I create a video? Or how to upload your math homework that's been written down. Things like that are going to be again and again. You can create a resource that answers all of those. And then you can also refer to it when you have that assignment. So rather than going through all the instructions again, you can say, check the how do I resource for more details on how to do a screencast. I know we all know how to do that in Zoom now, but before, that was some of those how-tos that I did. I had a faculty who used advice from former students. And so at the end of the course, she would ask for feedback, say, okay, what advice would you give to students in the next section? And then that became a resource that was available as part of the first week in the Start Here, are both places. One of the courses that I use, I teach faculty. And so we do use the academic exchange here, which is for questions or sharing, or it's for anything. And I seed the discussion. And so when I run across something that is a good example of something that they could share, I post it in there. I follow the same model that I would want them to. There's a couple of things that I know come up at certain times. And so I'll put a question in. It's like, if you're concerned about this project, remember to check the how do I resource, things like that. It's not as well used, so when something shows up there, it tends to show up on people's radar. So here's some examples. When you do use the academic exchange, make sure you explain to students what it should be. Like I said, I use the academic exchange with my faculty development. And so we also get questions like, wait a minute, I love this activity. How did you create this in the LMS? I'd like to replicate that. So those are some of those questions that show up. Points of clarity, again, instructions. This is one of the examples. We use a lot of reflection in the faculty development. That helps create cognitive presence. And I get pushback on it. Not everybody likes to reflect. So I bring in some research and that sort of thing to kind of let them know, why I'm doing this. This is our How Do I resource. This happens to be a glossary tool in Moodle. That's our LMS. There's many ways that you could do this. You could have a folder in Google. You could have a folder in Microsoft, that sort of thing. You could create your own website of links, things like that. You could do a Padlet. There's so many ways that you could pull this together for your course. You can see it's sorted. You can see the sort of things. Generally what has happened is the questions from the academic exchange, how did you create, or how to questions ended up going into the how to resource. And that's how that how to resource was built. Things like, wait a minute, how did you hyperlink in the Moodle editor? We do have them record directly in Moodle, so those are instructions. Submitting a Google Doc link, things like that. Updating your forum preferences, that was one of the first things we talked about. And I started actually following advice from previous students from that one faculty member. And so this is the question that we use in the final reflection form. And then we use that advice with the course. So on the page that they sign up from, advice. The biggest advice is make sure you have time, things to do that. All right. Time management. I'm going to pause right now. Any questions or comments that you have at this point in time? If you're good, give me a thumbs up with reaction, or I'm good, hands work. Still with me? That's just my check-in. Okay. Thanks, George. I love the myriad of thumbs up that happen. All right, let's talk about some time management techniques. I'm going to pause right here. One of my roles is I manage, we have 4 instructional designers, and there came a point in time, it was 2 years ago, and I kept hearing, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And so I'm like, all right, we need to deal with time management. And my favorite comment was, I don't have time to talk about time management. But we did take some time in a meeting, and I said, what do you do? I just asked my team, what do you do to manage time? So we all shared what we currently do. And then I asked them to go find something new. And in the next meeting, I said, what did you find? And so we all shared different time management techniques and strategies. And then I said, pick one to do and report on that next time we come back. I did not dictate how they managed their time. I did not even share at that point what I was planning to do. I just said, do something. So we had lots of Kanban boards get created, different types of Post-it notes were ordered, magnets for our dry erase boards, our Kanban boards, and everybody tried something different. And just being intentional helped the team find something to manage their time. Most recently, we had another issue. There was this certain type of project that everybody was leaving to the last minute. It just lingered and lingered and lingered. As we had the discussion, we found out it was an email distraction problem. So then we talked about ways to manage your email. Things like closing notifications off, filtering, setting a time to check your email. So you check your email at 9. We have an 8 o'clock morning meeting. So check your email at 9 and then again at 2. We have a much bigger team, so not everybody feels like they have to respond to every single email. It's okay. Communicating with each other about, I'm working on a big project. I'm not going to be answering emails right now. So before I came into this presentation, I let my team know, okay, this is the hour I'm presenting. So I'm going to be ignoring everybody for right now because I'm presenting. So just try something. One of the first things that I would recommend that you do is, and I'm going to pause, did it work with the time manage? It did. It did. You just try one thing, be intentional, and everybody has kind of come down and found their own thing. So we've done everything from Pomodoro, time blocking, communicating was a big one, sharing and just talking about what they're doing. Suddenly people felt the need to actually do what they were talking about, a large variety of things. Yeah, it's hard to keep yourself up to date. But the first and foremost with this one, this is focused on teaching, but I would say the same thing falls with the instructional design work, is create a schedule for yourself. That seems pretty obvious, but in terms of teaching, create a schedule for your students and then pay attention to your own schedule. And then consider all your courses and responsibilities. And that's where you came up with, research and all of those other things. One of the faculty that did this, one of the things that he had some really great discussions that required depth and, thought-provoking prompts and things like that. And he's like, I don't need to do this every week in all my courses. And so he had 2 courses that he taught because he also had admin responsibilities. And so he just flipped it. So he never had both of his courses having the same intense discussion, not the same discussion, but similar of intensity every week. He just said, we'll just do it every other week. So then my grading time comes down. In terms of scheduling, a common feature is that in an online class is everything's due on Sunday. And then if you're going to grade, then you should be grading the next day. So you just plan your schedule that way. However, I had a nursing faculty who said, I have clinics all day on Monday. So she changed her due date to Monday night. She just switched the due dates around. And in fact, the example I'm showing you is a Tuesday, Thursday class mentality thinking. But if you are going to, let's move my arrow out of the way. So if this is a recommended schedule for the students, this faculty member is basically thinking of their course as a Tuesday, Thursday course. So students complete stuff by noon on Tuesday, and they have the form by noon, and then They actually give them till the end of the evening for the Thursday assignments. There's a large conversation too, always in terms of scheduling. Are faculty required to work on the weekends? And that will depend on you, your decisions, how you establish your balance, as we talked about this morning. You can see that this faculty member decided that students should also have the weekend off. But that means that if stuff is due on Tuesday, this is what the faculty member needs to be doing on Wednesday. So when we have the conversations around the feedback plan and QM standard 5.3, and people say, I can't grade right away, well, rethink when things are due. Rethink how this happens. There's a couple of example schedules that are in the example files for you. And one of them is a hybrid class that met in the studio. It was a studio class, dance class, on Monday and Wednesday, and then had all the other work due. So basically, they started first day of class, actually, when this class went live, happened to be the eclipse in Idaho. So we had no school on that day. And so she started her class on Wednesday, and her sections, units, modules, whatever you want to call them, went for 2 weeks, Wednesday to Wednesday. And you'll see that schedule. But you need to step back and look at your schedule and plan it intentionally. So we have a couple of other things going on in the IDs, and what to do. What does day-to-day work look like? There was a workshop session last fall, actually, on project management. And that's where I would head into is some project management things. I had a new hire who came from K-12, and she's like, what does a typical day look like? And the answer is, it's not a typical day. As any of you IDs know. But really kind of communicating. One of the other things I've done with my IDs is I have a once a month one-on-one. And one of the things that I ask about is how they're doing, how they're managing. Because I want to make sure that my team has what they need when they need it. All right. This is the last thing. A course guide. This came about because I facilitated this course. It's handing it over to a new person, and I was going to be out. So for an extended time. And so what I did, I already had an announcement file. Many of you will have that, the common announcements that you have every semester. You start that by just copying the announcements that you currently have and throwing them into a document. When the new course comes around that week, you look at it, you modify it a little bit, put it in the course. But we added reminders, grading tasks, and email templates. So I'm going to show you a little bit what this looks like. So this is our week 6. And so this is the week 6. We do have items due on Wednesday and Sunday for this course. So Monday, we schedule a grading meeting for the people that are co-facilitating. We have a reminder to post the new announcement if it hasn't been done, because sometimes they get put ahead of time and released. You can do that. This week, there is a workshop. So we have to remember to close the workshop. This is the item that we have to grade. And actually, we have 2 items that needed to be graded. So these were the things that were due on Sunday, is these 3 things. We even have notes. The way we do this through the major project, we have one common facilitator, but then some of the smaller assignments, we mix it up so that all the participants get feedback from whoever's facilitating. So there's some cross blending there. So that's the random graders, and then the feedback groups is the one we follow somebody through their major project. When we meet Thursday, here's our checklist. Here's the Monday announcement. We put in emails at the first week for somebody who hasn't logged in yet, somebody who hasn't read the syllabus. As part of this, we actually also create development courses for the participants. And so we have an email that goes out when that that course is created with all the information on that one. So what happens is with this course guide, I don't have to remember Monday morning what we're doing. I just open up the file and I know that we're in week 6, Monday. Okay, we need to make sure the announcement's been posted. So it's basically your to-do list for your course. This changes. Some other things that show up is when we make some modifications to the course. We're constantly improving it. And so we go through and make sure that we will double and triple check that updates were made. That will often get added. We actually change these to check marks when they're done because that makes us feel better. And so we go through it and it helps us stay on track. This also works well if you have to hand over a course to somebody else. So with this morning, so if you think about, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? And, you know, in our most recent one, you know, what if you ended up in the hospital with COVID? What would happen to your course? If you have a course guide, somebody can easily come in and they just go through the list and they have all the information that they need. If you need to head out for a family emergency, if you're just going to be gone for a week, if you need somebody to help you during a week that you're at a conference, all of these things can help not only you, but also help you with that balance and that you don't need to remember it. It's there. So you just remember it's here. There's an example of the full course guide that we have that's there.
Lisa, it's Mary Jane. We only have like 2 minutes left, so I don't, because I have to get into another classroom. So I just want to give you that little warning.
Thanks for the heads up. We're on the last slide, so hopefully you'll select something. So get your stamps out and put a check box next to something that you already do. So if you already use an announcement file, put a check mark there and put a star next to something that you would like to use. So hopefully you found something new. Lots of good answers there. So this was our last one. You've now selected something. I encourage you to choose one thing. Choose one thing to focus on, build it a little bit at a time. You can do this. Please remember to fill out the course evaluation. My contact information is on the last slide. Feel free to reach out to me. I love the QM community and am willing to talk to Confab, to look for anything that we're using that can help, or sharing ideas. I have a couple notes from some of the chat, so thank you. So that's our 2 minutes. Looks like. All right.
Lisa, thank you so much. It was very informative. Appreciate you taking the time out today to help us.
Not a problem. So I hope you all have a great conference and attend some other sessions. Jump into Gatherly and explore that at least just a little bit. That's a fun thing to do.
Way to go, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think I'm going to end the session. Thanks again, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Thanks.